Hello everybody, this is Dr. Divika, MBBS and SLT. So I have created a channel regarding basic ENT so that it becomes help for all the juniors and the youth students find ENT as a difficult subject. And so let's get started. Today I would like to start with the anatomy of the ear, and we can divide the ear into three parts: the external ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. And in this video, I would like to talk about the anatomy of the external ear. The external ear can divide into three parts: the pinna, the extraordinary canal, and the tympanic membrane. Now coming to the pinna. The pinna or the organ consists of a single piece of plastic cartilage but excited level. Now, in the pinna, there are convolutions and projections, which you can see in the picture: the helix, the antihelix, the tragus, the concha, the lobe. Right. Now, pinna, as I said, there is made up of only one single piece of plastic cartilage. There is one area where this cartilage is deficient, and this area is the technical factor. It's an important landmark for the surgical approach in case of the end-on approach to the nuclear surgery. External auditory canal. The external auditory canal extends from the concha through the tympanic membrane, is aligned with 4mm length and is divided into two parts. One is the fluid and the other is the cartilaginous part. The cartilaginous part is around 8 mm in length. The external auditory canal is not a straight tube. Its outer part is directed upwards, backwards, and medially, and its inner part is directed downwards, forwards, and medially. Hence, when we need to see the tympanic membrane, we have to lift the pinna upwards, backwards, and laterally. The skin covering cartilaginous part contains the cerebellous gland and the sebaceous glands, which simply prevents and is a protective function of the ear. Now, hair is only present in the outer third of the canals. Furuncles, these emitters defining the infections, are only limited to the outer part of the canal. Now, the bony part is a major part of the extracorporeal canal, which is around 16 mm in 6 mm lateral to the bony meatus. There is a narrow area which is known as the isthmus, and the clinical importance is that the foreign bodies are usually lodged in this part of the deep meatus and difficult to remove. Also beyond the isthmus, there is a recess which is known as the anterior recess, and it is acts as a cesspool for the discharge in case of any external or miliary infections. Next is the tympanic membrane. The tympanic membrane, it forms the partition between the external auditory canal and the middle ear. It is like 10 mm tall, 6 to 8 mm wide, and 0.1 mm thick. The periphery of the tympanic membrane, it is formed by fibrocartilaginous ring, which is known as the animus tympanicus, and this is actually lodged in the tympanic sulcus. Now, we need to know that the tympanic membrane is actually not straight. It is angulated. It is at an angle of 55 degrees with the flow of the external auditory canal, and it is also obliquely located, as its posterior superior part is more lateral as compared to the anterior inferior part. Now, the tympanic membrane is divided into 4 quadrants. How do we divide it into quadrants? We need to know that the entire tympanic membrane is tilted to the central point of the malleus, the tip of the malleus, where this projection is known as the umbo. Now, we draw two imaginary lines, that is a straight and a horizontal. One horizontal line passing to the center of the umbo, and one vertical line passing to the angle of the malleus and the umbo, dividing the tympanic membrane into 4 quadrants. They are the anterior superior, anterior inferior, posterior superior, and posterior inferior. Tympanic membrane is actually of two parts: pars tensa and the pars placida, or the Schachner's membrane. The pars tensa is what I said is mainly the periphery is converted into a fibrocartilaginous ring, which is known as tympanicus, and not in the tympanic sulcus. Whereas the pars placida, it forms the part between the above the lateral process of the malleus to the notch of the ravenous, and between the anterior and the posterior malleolar folds. This is actually a difficult area to see to participate. Coming to the layers of the tympanic membrane, 3 layers: outer epithelial layer, inner mucosal layer, which is continuous with the medial mucosa, outer epithelial layer continuous with the skin of the external auditory canal, and the middle fibrous layer, which consists of the radial, parabolic, and the circular fiber. However, we need to know that the middle layer or the fibrous layer is not so much organized in the pars placida. So the pinna is mainly supplied by the greater auricular nerve on the lateral surface and only the posterior part of the medial surface. Plus, the pinna is also supplied by the lesser occipital nerve on the medial surface in the superior part. The auriculotemporal nerve and auriculotemporal nerve mainly contributes to the helix and the tragus. The reciprocity helix and the tragus, the auricular branch of the vagus, so this is the Arnold's nerve and the facial nerve. These both contribute to the nerve supply of the pinna in the maybe in the concha and the retroauricular groove. Talking about the blood supply, it's mainly by the branches of the external carotid artery. So posterior auricular branch supplying the posterior part of the external artery, posterior part of the pinna, and superior branches, the middle branches, and the inferior branches of the carotid artery mainly contribute to the blood vessel artery supply of the pinna, and similarly the venous supply is also by the pulmonary veins. Next is the external auditory canal. The extreme canal, simply speaking, the anterior wall and the roof is mainly by the auriculotemporal nerve, that is the branch of the mandibular branch of the trigeminal nerve. Then the floor and the posterior wall is mainly by the vagus, that is the auricular branch of the vagus, and also partly by the sensory branch of the facial nerve, which is supplied by the auricular branch of the vagus. And hence, during herpes zoster otitis, we see the lesions in the ear around the distribution of the facial nerve. Next, going to the nerve supply of the tympanic membrane. Nerve supply of the tympanic membrane, if you see, the middle surface is by the tympanic branch of the classical nerve, and the lateral surface. So this lateral surface, anterior half is mainly by the auricular branch, and the posterior half is by the auricular branch of the fingers.